You made an interesting point that in the column that I really want to pick up on. You were talking about Eric Adams, but you could have been talking about Adams, Letitia James, or Alvin Bragg, that their love of drag reflects the priorities of white Lululemon liberals on the Upper West Side, not working class black voters in Brooklyn. And that is really the central theme that you explore. It's like they get into office saying they're about one thing, and then once they're in the office, they really show you what the agenda is, and they're always concerned about making sure that we show we're allies for the LGBTQ, and that's really the agenda of white female women. And I bring that up to say, I've heard you talk about it, I've heard other people make the joke in passing that again, all these people really have the mindset of a white female liberal. And then I was looking at some studies this morning, TJ Moe actually sent them to me, where Pew Research in 2020 did a study that was widely reported, people wrote stories about it. 56% of white women between 18 and 29 who identify as liberal have also reported to their doctor some sort of mental health struggle. And when you look at the spectrum for white women who lean liberal, they are far more prone to be suffering from some sort of mental health issue than any other demographic. And if you juxtapose it with white conservative women, for a liberal, it's off the charts. And I thought of that, and TJ sent it to me because it's like the people with mental health issues in a high number, white liberals, women, female liberals, that's who black people, black politicians, that's who our allies are. That's who we take our political cues from. That's who gives us our marching orders. That's who we're trying to please. It really, and it speaks to why we have such mental health issues going on. This liberal group, and again, I sound like a political partisan, and I guess that I am, because liberalism, I do believe, it's a mental illness. It's detached from logic and reason. Am I wrong for going that far?
No, not at all. I think you're spot on. I mean, to the extent that religious affiliation has declined in this country, and it's declined amongst whites and certainly amongst black folk, I think what you've seen is that two of the core functions of the church, I'll speak from a Christian religious tradition, one in terms of building a sense of identity. Who am I, right? And ultimately the question of who am I leads to a different question, like whose am I? From where did I come? Who created me? When you take church out of the equation, then people look to something else to answer that question about who am I? And more, particularly the more liberal a person is, they look to their politics, right? They look to their politics to answer that question. Now, it's not just liberals, because I've seen some political idolatry on the right that has been exacerbated certainly since 2016, and when Trump got on the scene. But there's the identity function of the church, and then there's to some extent, I guess, the counseling function, right? So when things are going wrong, Christians will look to God to make sense of it and to say, okay, God, why am I suffering in this way? And for people who no longer go to church, they have outsourced that particular function to their therapists, and that's why now everyone throughout the culture, across religious lines and across ethnic background, speaks in the language of personal therapy. Everything is a harm, microaggressions. These are not even terms that were part of our lexicon 30 years ago, right? And particularly for black folk, our aggressions used to be macro. So a dog that's snarling at you or open water hose is a macroaggression. But if you're wearing, a suit, a black suit at a black tie function, and you're holding a tray or you're holding some hors d'oeuvres, and somebody asks you to serve them, and you say, "Oh my goodness, this person thought I was the help. Oh, I have a microaggression." This is not something that people used to be consumed with. But I think what we're seeing is the loss of religion has turned many Americans, even ones who self-identify as religious people, inside. Everything is about self-talk and how I feel and what someone said to me and what someone did to me. And I think that type of narcissistic behavior has really been unleashed in the culture. And you see it working its way throughout every part of our political system in terms of or popular culture. Jason, I mean, even some of the shows we talked about the last couple of weeks, when you see the most powerful or influential voices in sports media and their constant complaint is that Lamar Jackson is not getting paid enough money, or the same people, Angela Bassett didn't win some award. It's always the use of financial resources, political capital, social influence for the betterment and the benefit of the quote unquote elites. And that's one of the problems, and that's one of the things that I talked about in the piece, particularly as it relates to Afrostocracy. And I chart the devolution from the talented 10th, which some people have issues with, but there's always going to be hierarchy in any large enough group, to the Afrostocracy. The former use their power and their education to try to uplift the race. They preached a message of temperance and self-control and education and thrift and industry. The latter are parasites who leech from the community, and they use the poverty and misery of the black underclass to fuel their own interests. And that's why I use the example of Puff, of Diddy, who told GM after George Floyd died, you guys need to pay us some more money. And then I use the example of the USA Today article that said 2 years after George Floyd died, all right, this is my dramatic rereading of their tweet, after all these companies pledge, diversity and to improve diversity in hiring and so on and so forth, these companies have come up short. And the people who haven't gotten the perks and the power are black women. And that is the Afrostocracy, and that is the liberal left in a nutshell. George Floyd died on the streets of Minneapolis. Therefore, millionaires need to turn into billionaires. Black women need to get the corner office at Google and Amazon. And Robin DiAngelo needs to sell more books. That is the Afrostocracy and the modern left in a nutshell. So when you have people who think like that, I'm not surprised that they struggle more with mental illness and mental health conditions than the average American.
Like what you saw? Hit that like button, subscribe, and check out the full episode by clicking the link below.